Welcome to the BS and Beer Show. We are excited to have you guys here. This is a volunteer show that we do every week. So our guests and our hosts are all volunteers. So thank them kindly for the time that they bring to the show and share their expertise on different things that we talk about. So we're really excited about that. Fine Home Building and Green Building Advisor are our media partner that make this happen on Zoom each week. And then that gets uploaded to our YouTube channel and shared on Green Building Advisor's blog post as well. So if you missed a show, feel free to pop over to the YouTube channel and check out all of the past shows that we've been doing for the last year and a half. So thank you to them for doing that. It's an independent grassroots movement here on Zoom on Thursday nights. So thanks for joining us. I'm Emily Mottram, architect here in Maine. I am unfortunately, don't shoot me, drinking water tonight. So being good again, gluten-free beer, hard to find. So
I can
I'm out
attest.
there. But Greg, do you have access to the document for the show tonight? Did Mike give you?
Not for tonight's show. I have an older one.
Okay. All right. So I'll just roll with the announcements then, since you don't have access to that. We'll let you introduce yourself in a minute. But anyway, if you're new to Zoom, the chat box is probably lighting up on the bottom of your screen. Just a reminder, if you're going to post in the chat box, pick everyone, so both the panelists and the hosts and everyone in the audience can see it. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Your friends don't know you're here if you don't say hello in the chat box. So say hello in the chat box and tell us what you're drinking. Fine Home Building sends out a Zoom reminder every week. All that tells you is here's the link to the show. Don't forget, we're doing it on Thursday night. If you want to know what the show's topic is, pop over to the bsandbeershow.com and join our mailing list. You'll get a weekly mailer that tells you about our guests and what our show topic is for the week. Video recordings for the show are found on the bsandbeershow.com and on our YouTube channel and on Green Building Advisor's BS and Beer blog post. An audio-only version of the show is also available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts if you'd like to listen to the audio. We definitely recommend joining live so that you get advance of the guests and the chat box video, secondary audio if you have to. So welcome to the show. Greg, as a host, introduce yourself, tell us who you are and what you're drinking.
Well, my name is Greg Buzzle. I spent my first 4 years in the realm of architecture working at EcoCore. So pretty well immersed in Passive House. I absolutely love the code compliance plus of Pretty Good House, plus the cost savings versus Passive House. It's an absolutely beautiful model. And I'm an architect in training, so to speak, I guess, at Knickerbocker Group out of Boothbay. And I am drinking, believe it or not, a blueberry wine that my stepson, unfortunately, the camera, oh, there we go. The camera doesn't want to pick it up, but my stepson made blueberry wine by mashing blueberries, letting them ferment naturally, and then it became wine after he filtered it, and it's pretty tasty.
That's
Excellent.
impressive.
Thanks for joining us tonight as a host. We're excited to have you. Travis, off to you.
It's my pleasure to introduce our guest, but first I'll introduce myself. I'm Travis Brungard. I'm in Prairie Village, Kansas. I'm drinking an Easy Sport from Boulevard beer, and I get to introduce my buddies from Construction Instruction. I'm super excited about this. These are the principles of construction instruction, which you can find at constructioninstruction.com. It's a company that provides building professionals with the tools needed to apply building science principles while integrating cost-effective, practical solutions to build better, longer-lasting, and healthier homes. Brief personal aside, I have been to the construction instruction facility in Denver. I began my building science journey prompted by a talk that Mark gave in Kansas City at my local contractor's licensing so long ago. I owe these guys a great debt. So it truly is a pleasure to have you guys. Thank you so much for doing this. I'll start by introducing Gord Cook. Gord Cook has over 25 years of experience in the energy efficient residential building industry. Gord has a unique talent for applying his technical expertise in building science, HVAC systems, and indoor air quality to current building issues. Gord, thank you for joining us. Are you drinking with us tonight?
Well, it's you say that. I literally been trapped in the office here since 8 o'clock Eastern, and this morning I had visions of getting out. Frankly, my son is in the brewing industry. He works for a builder supply group. They support 750 different craft brewers with products, hops, so on. So I was going to rely on him to get me some interesting sample, but I didn't even get outside the office today. So I'm drinking water. Sorry.
That's all right. There's no shame in hydrating. It's an important part of life. And I like to give Emily a hard time about it, but I certainly won't give you any trouble. Thanks
Okay.
again for joining us. Next
Yeah,
up, I'm going to
my
introduce my
pleasure.
buddy Mark. So Mark has over 25 years experience and devotes his time educating the building industry on the benefits of constructing durable, energy efficient, and healthy homes through lectures, video series, and publications. Mark inspired me to run through a wall to build better. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Mark. Are you drinking with us tonight? You having a beer? What do you think? Take
Well,
yourself.
thank you. It's always a pleasure, Trav, and it's been probably 35 years. I wish it was just 25. But I've got water that I'm drinking, and it's from a builder that gave me a really nice bottle. So I'm farther west than you guys, so I can't start drinking for another couple hours.
Where are you at today? So Gord's up
I'm
in
in
Canada. Where are you?
I'm in Santa Barbara today.
Oh, wow. You guys are all spread out.
Everywhere.
I'm hoping that Justin's in the facility in Denver, but we'll get to him
He
next.
is.
Justin,
Yes.
Justin Wilson works with national and regional builders on new construction of residential and commercial buildings and forensic investigations on building sites all over North America to find solutions to problems in the building processes that affect energy, comfort, and durability. Justin Wilson, how are you? Thanks for joining us. Are you drinking with us tonight?
Pleasure to be here. Yes, I am, because I went over, I've got to hold it in front of a green screen. So I am drinking an IPA right off of our new kegerator that we've had here since COVID started. We needed another toy. So we usually tap two different beers. This one is a Deschutes, so I'm doing something from the Northwest, not Denver. Emily, there are a couple of brewers here in Denver that are doing gluten-free IPAs, and they're actually pretty good. So if you come out and see us, make sure you give me some forewarning, and I'll make sure I get a couple of their pint cans. They're fabulous. So I'm doing Deschutes Fresh Squeezed IPA tonight.
I definitely need to do that. Come out your way. Try your gluten-free beer. Check out my Emu Passive folks on a tour when I come out your way. So absolutely, I will take you up on that.
We've had Marianne over here from Emu, so they're great. They're great. So they don't know we have beer yet here, so I'll bet she'll be back. So
We're already getting questions popping in the chat box. I don't want to derail the opening presentation, but I love that Mike immediately put in, how does Justin maintain such a thick head of hair? We all need to know.
yeah, it's white. Oh, I don't know. Yeah, I'm old, I guess. Vitamins. Yeah, I don't know.
The thrill of racing cars
White, though.
hasn't robbed you of your hair yet.
No, that's a be still sport. You've got to keep yourself calm and collected, so you can't be stressed out. But yes, we're actually just pulling the cars in the barn here right now, but it's in the trailer, so I couldn't show it to you all tonight. But it's about ready for its winter refresh. That's what it just came off the track about a week and a half ago. So it's ready for its winter nap. That means pull it all apart and put it back together again so it can go next year. So
But you had a good racing season. You had a good racing season, Justin. I think you won quite a few races and came in first and second. So he's a hell of a racer. So
yeah,
well done.
yeah, we got the West Coast Championships nailed down in GTS German Touring Series class, and 14 first place and I think 3 seconds. So it's been a fortunate year.
Is there anything you don't do high performance? So you got the head of hair, you got the racing, you got the building science. Like, where's the weak link? Everyone's got to have something they're hiding in the closet, right?
You won't
Can't
find
golf.
it with Justin.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a few. I'm not good at juggling, but I'm working on it. It's my winter project. My kid wants to learn how to juggle. He's 6, and so he said, "Dad, can we learn how to juggle together?" So I've got these bean bags, the little juggle bags coming.
Nice.
So that's going to be our fun winter project.
That's a very attainable goal. Do you guys have a presentation to share with us about the teaching process that you guys use through construction instruction? Is there anything you wanted to share to start us off, to kind of talk about the way you guys educate?
Gord,
No, I
maybe
don't
is
think
a good starter, Mark, but we don't have
Yeah.
slides.
No, it's okay.
Don't have any sense.
Yeah.
But I think, Gordon, if you'd like to share a little bit about what we've done, and I think that would be fine. Otherwise, it's just really, if Justin, maybe you could go over to the wall. We've got that little breakdown of the little places where there's a, little track on how people get through those courses. That's not a bad thing to show too. So people can just see that the coursework and the content is designed around high performance building enclosures for HVAC, cold climates, water management, all of those kind of facets. And then the rest of the content sits there.
Yeah, and Mark being Santa Barbara, but his green screen is the background of framing exercise that we did in the shop as well. It's a pre-cut framing package, but we engineered it's lifted up with an open web floor truss system, and it's got two active with outdoor units, active systems, one heat pump system, and then another typical gas furnace sits down there. Both are zoned. You're able to load them with static and do other things. And now we've got 5 different ERVs, all functional, operational in the building, mini split systems, multi-split systems. So we're trying to fill it up. It's 11,000 square feet with a classroom, and we're doing a pretty good job at it. But I'll pull us into the classroom here in a little bit. Once I get off my chair, Gord talks a little bit. I'll give you all a little bit of a tour. I guess that'll be the
Gord, lay the groundwork for us. Tell us, what there are people here that don't know what construction instruction is, how you guys came together as a group, how'd you get started? Just give us kind of the big broad overview. What do you guys do? Even though I know, tell me why.
Sure, and I really appreciate that. All of us on this call, I'm sure everybody in the industry has been to those, I'll say 2-hour lectures, 3-hour seminars, full day workshops, and you come out of it and going, what do I do next? And that's kind of where we got started with this. I remember years and years ago doing a presentation. A young woman at that time, still young at heart, a good friend of mine, Gail Lawler, who has a degree in adult education. I didn't know her at the time, but she came up to the front. I'm thinking, oh, this will be interesting. And she said, you're a really good speaker. And I said, oh, thanks very much. She goes, but I didn't learn a darn thing. I said, what do you mean? She said, you're really entertaining, but you're not really achieving the goals, or at least the principles, of adult education. And adult education isn't just about awareness. And most of us take awareness training. Oh yeah, I've heard of that before. But we never get to the level of application and experience. And so for years, Mark, Jess, and I were out doing training. We've had tremendous opportunities by some forward-thinking companies who said, we want to go deeper. We want to hear more. We want to get to that opportunity for experiential and application learning. And that was really the derivation of CI Live, is because we tried to mimic that in the field. We would go and we'd send people plans and say, hey, can you build this wall section? So then we get there, we can do some demonstrations, or we'd go out on site, and we still, obviously that's still really valuable. Let's meet them right where they're at. So we did a lot of in-field work. A very common session for us would be, we did a series for a large national builder. We went to every one of their divisions. We would go visit their site in the morning, take some pictures, do some training, then come back in their office. They'd invite a bunch of folks, and we would show them what we'd found. But we felt like we needed to go even deeper than that. So awareness and application training, but let's get to experiential training. And that's what CI Live is really about, is where you can, and we find, and Mark, you'll agree with this, the first day, people come, there's a magic to an evening of thought, right? So the first day, people will come, they're listening, they're sitting back. What's really remarkable, Mark, is the next morning, right? Where we want to get started, and all of a sudden the hands go up in the air. What about, and I saw yesterday, and you were talking about, and we'll get to like 10:30, 11 o'clock the second day, and we're still answering questions, and people go, is that okay? Exactly. That's what this is about. And it's really that, having that sober second thought, if you will, that evening to think about it. Our minds are amazing, right? When we're given a task, we do things, we're given a little bit of hands-on experience, a little chance to try some things. We sleep on it overnight, and we come back and go, okay, now I really need to know what was going on there. That's when we know we've gone from awareness and application to actual experience and reflection, where people actually reflect. And those are 4 pretty common stages of education, and that's what we're trying to achieve at CI Live. And Of course, we have great partners who help us with that, manufacturers who recognize that, yeah, this is nice to get to a much deeper level. They let us have at it. They allow Justin to tear things apart and show them what's wrong with their equipment. Nothing wrong with that, right? Here's some shortfalls of things. Here's that. You need to let folks know that if they're going to use this in the field, they have to be ready for this. And we feel that's a second part of CI Live, is to be able to help manufacturers understand how their products are applied out in the field and what the folks really need to know about how to get that product installed correctly. So that's the derivation. As Mark had said, he's been doing it 35 years. I'm actually at 35, 37 years myself. And it's just so much fun. You know, I see some great names on this chat, man. Great folks, Greg from Australia and Armando. These are people that are doing this stuff. I'm just so pleased they're with Jim Larson, all these folks that are with us, because people will say, I've heard this before, right? But in fact, you haven't experienced it. And if you have to retune your body and experience it yet again. And I think everybody probably preaching to the converted here, you need to hear this from different voices, in different ways, in different learning environments. And CI Live is one of those.
Yeah. Yeah, I would completely agree, Gordon. I think it's also, I remember we did an event. It was a 5-day event. It was crazy, but we did all kinds of things. And we remember Gordon said after the first day, the second day, this wonderful woman and her husband were builders, and she must have been 60. And I remember she calls her husband back on the phone. He was back at the facility, and she came to do the learning. And she goes, "Honey, I just need to tell you something. Stop doing everything. We've been doing it wrong. So just wait till I get home." And it was just hysterical because she was like, I had no idea what we didn't know. And I think that's part of this, is just that this community has changed so much, and so many people. You look at Unbuilded Podcasts and all the other people who are doing really great transfer of knowledge. And I think that we're watching this beautiful blossom of high performance buildings, managing water, indoor air quality, right sizing of mechanical systems. The speed at which this is going to change is now so much better. Gordon and I and Justin have been at this for a long time and watching this kind of creep along at change. And all of a sudden, thanks to this community of sharing everything they know, no, not a modesty issue. Just everybody goes, "Hey, I don't know," or "I tried," and watching people go like, "This is fantastic," like you, Trav. And I think that's what's so exciting about the way in which we're now learning that making buildings be successful, healthy, durable, safe, affordable to operate, aesthetically pleasing, those are fundamentals that we should all expect and really drive towards. But this is the way it changes, and you guys are killing it. And so thank you for letting us join you, because we always we were watching you build BS and beer and going, I want to do that. So I'm so glad you invited us. I was really glad when you said we could come on. I'm like, yes, we get to do the fancy show. So that was good.
I love that people think it's a fancy show. This is great.
I have to jump in. I'm right there with you, Mark, because I get to do the fancy show. And a couple of other comments. I started out my architectural career in Passive House. I've never known anything else. So to talk about people just not knowing what they don't know, like that applies to Passive House as well. But when I talk to builders and they don't have any concept of an air barrier or of air tightness or makeup air, for example, these are things that I feel are fairly standard. And how do you overcome these gaps of knowledge that the people that you talk to generally experience?
Yeah, I think one thing that's a really good point. I'll also remember that there's so many variations in this marketplace, right? So we have cold weather, we have rain, we have so many variations in terms of what affects buildings that we have to first learn the fundamentals of the physics, right? So the physics principles and the reasons why things do what they do, psychrometrics, thermodynamics, those are fundamentals that sometimes you got to get those first. So you're like, so when I go home, is there anything I should realize that's different? You're like, oh yeah, you live in Portland. That's a little different than living in Arizona. And so all of these parts and pieces then become something that you have to internally understand what the principles are, so that as you decide to execute on exterior insulation or changing a window detail, moving it inside or outside, it's not so much about asking someone to show you the exact way to do it as much as you realize, if I follow all these principles, the odds of me gaining success go way up. And that's really what we're after. Is it a capillary break? What things do I need to make sure I'm executing all of it. And I think that's what happens when we get kind of in those buckets, whether it's, passive house or net zero, wherever it is. You have to remember that all the fundamentals still apply, and the variations, as long as they don't interrupt the physics stuff, we're in good shape. Sometimes go, yeah, I did an ICF and I don't have to waterproof the walls. It's amazing. They never leak. And I'm like, oh, now you're in trouble. And so that's where we want to make sure that we go, you don't get to opt out of a physics issue. You got to stay focused on those.
Yeah, I think that the piece that we're so pleased to have, and it's been going on a lot here during of course, the COVID shutdown, we haven't had really people in this building until we had a party here when EBA had their conference here in Denver a month ago. And then last week, we finally had a group on a 2-day training here that was a private function. But having the ability to go into our shop, our lab, and we can set it up. One, there's a lot of active projects that have been going on here for COVID, really because we needed to look at, we need to bring this content to people now by film, by virtual. And unfortunately, even to the level of detail that we wanted to show, we had to build a new system because Zoom cuts frame rates and you can't get really tight and close on your fingers doing something. So that meant cameras and other things. But to kind of step back, when people come here, Travis was here, we ask the questions and say, well, maybe we have that stuff in the back. And we have this collection of stuff in an 8,000 square foot warehouse, forklifts and everything, where we can dig it back out or have it ready for people and say, okay, but let's apply the science to this thing. And you actually touch it and experience it. And by the way, I know you installed your window there. Travis saw this firsthand when he was here. I know you all looked at, this was a typical window install and a typical water and air resistant barrier. Let's go do an ASTM 331 test on it in the morning and see, did it actually work, right? And I think we need that. We need this connection back to say, and then let's take it apart together. Where did it leak? Wow, the staple leaked? Who thought the staple would ever have that much water come through it? And I think this practical application is really important for people. It's important for me. I worked for a builder for a decade, and I always wanted to do this stuff and say, and you all know that I become sort of a smart aleck in some of these things. That I met someone at a trade show right before COVID hit, and I flew back home, and then that was it. And I haven't been anywhere since, just on Zoom, seeing all of us tiny people now. But they showed me a wall that they'd been working on forever, that they'd put together, that had all these layers that they used the building science part. And I'll ask the question that I asked them is, well, it is great. I really think you put a lot of detail into this. I think that it's for the climate that it's in. You've given some thought. There's all these things, but I have to ask one other thing though. Has anyone actually tested this thing? Because there's a few things that are out of the ordinary on it. Do you actually know that it does actually hold out air and water, or are you just telling me? And like, well, these ASTM tests and things, I don't really get into all that. It's pretty technical. And I'm saying to myself, well, but hold on, because we have to have this benchmark, whether it's an excessive test or whatever it might be. You have to put some sort of benchmark so I actually have a comparison against other products and applications so that it would meet some minimum performance specification under the rigors of building science that we've already addressed. So that's what we're so fortunate here at this big building and facility in Denver to try and to pull off. And it could be a fan at the same time. It doesn't always have to be a wall with a window in it.
I think that's the brilliance of your approach, the sort of three-headed monster that you guys deploy to conquer lack of understanding or misunderstanding. It checked all the boxes for me. And I realize that you've sort of explained it, but I really want to give you credit because I've taken a lot of trainings over the years, and I really think that you guys kind of have the secret recipe in that you offer the auditory, the visual, and the tactile, where for day one, we sat down and Mark kind of introduced the program, what we were going to talk about. We went through a bunch of building science fundamentals, but not just talking at that high level. I brought our crew out there, Joe and I, my partner at Catalyst, we brought our two guys out at the time. One of them was 20. I mean, this is a young guy, pretty green to the industry. And you brought him along. You didn't leave him in the dust. You sort of said, okay, well, this is a wall assembly. and started talking through, but you didn't go super high level, instant nerdville where you're only talking to 4 people in the room. You brought everyone along with that initial discussion. And the way that you scratched that itch for me way back when you sort of, you talked a little bit inspirational. You start with that great Ruskin quote, and when we build, let us build forever. I mean, that stuff really got me going. I was ready. And then I've watched trainings from Gord, even though you weren't there the day I was there, Gord. You definitely get into the weeds and you take that next step and you do nail all the details. But on day 2, Justin's got us out in the back patio, or I guess you'd say loading dock area. Patio sounds nicer though. Can we make it sound like it's out in the cabana on the veranda? What's another word that ends in A? Whatever the case. You've got the spray rack set up and you're really giving us the opportunity, giving anyone the opportunity to come up and put their hands on the material. Oh, no, go ahead and put this together the way you would do it in the field. Okay, well, I'll do that real quick. All right, well, now I'm going to put this colored water here and we're going to turn on the fan and we're going to depressurize it and we're going to see where it leaks. So you have covered all of the bases. You've given us the why, you've given us the how, the technicals there. It's the total package. And I think that can't help but send the willing learner away with everything they could possibly gain. Because people do learn in a different way. Each person's different. My youngest guy on the crew, he very much needs to see it 2 or 3 times and have his hands on it to get that. Whereas, guys like Joe and I that are old, we can sit there and go, yep, I've done that. And I can hear you saying that. And it makes sense in my mind's eye. And I can execute that detail. And then I know with Emily's experience, because she teaches it's Penn State, right? Don't you teach at Penn State? No, you went to Penn State. Damn it. But you are a teacher. So when she teaches, she has a number of approaches that she employs too from the architect side. So I think it really is important to highlight those different areas, because that's the efficacy of the program, is checking all the boxes so that you hit everyone that's there in a different way.
And that's what, go ahead, Emily, go ahead.
Yeah. I was going to say too, there's a lot of things that come back to that. One, I love that you touch on the building science, but I like that you jump into it and do the hands-on stuff, which demystifies the science, right? Because you lose a bunch of people in the beginning when you start talking science. They're just like, don't want to do it. Sounds complicated, but you get a hands-on approach to it. You get to touch it, feel it, use the products. That's great. Travis and I actually did a podcast with a manufacturer on what would make the trade shows more beneficial. And it's like, these product manufacturers need to let us touch it and demonstrate it and work with it and try it out and, all that good stuff. More, not so many lunch and learns, lots more hands-on demonstrations. But then I think, to add on top of that is, you're right. You don't learn it. You've heard of it. You go to the lecture, you go to the thing, you try it. Yeah. You're like, okay, I think I'm getting it. But then when you have to teach someone else how to do it, that's when you learn if you actually know it or not.
It's something I learned very early on. A person that wanted me to teach a class. I said, I don't know anything about that. That's the best way to learn it, is for you to teach it. And so just to summarize what you said, Travis, we all learn differently and we all learn in layers. So it's layered learning. And it's fascinating at CI. You'll see, I remember distinctly an architect and a builder, both from the same market, they knew each other. And when we were out in the shop and Justin said, here, try this, the architect immediately stepped back and the builder immediately stepped forward. And then in the classroom, I said, here, let's have a look at these drawings. The builder immediately stepped back and the architect immediately stepped forward and leaned over the table. And it was just a really good reinforcement of, and I will say this, there's a science to building, there's a science to learning, and we are trying, hopefully successfully. And again, I'll say we've got some really good partners. We want to include others. We're very inclusive. Hey, you want to do some training with us? We'd love to talk to you about that, because we'd love people to experience. I see great names on here, Steve Basic. You need to hear from Steve. You need to hear from Armando. And then you need to hear from Mark and Justin. You need to hear it from different people in different ways and different voices. You need to hear a Canadian accent now and again. Heaven forbid we'll get Greg from Australia to come and do some training. That'll be really good. So you need to hear it from different folks. So, and Mark, sorry I interrupted, but
No. I was just going to say that, to get back to what some of the questions were really about how do we how do we do this with bringing other people into the trades? And Travis, I was going to mention this about mentorship, and I think we're learning that we often used to do this. I remember somebody said, I think it was Joe Stever could say, how many people learned their craft from an old guy? And part of this gets lost because we get kind of stuck on these stupid things, right? We find ourselves with a little cell phone, and I'm looking down and going, yeah, whatever. It's got to be look up and take people over, go, come here, I want to show you something. The reason why we do this, and that happens on sites. And so I watch when Steve Basic's been doing some of the stuff, he's on a job site, goes, here's why we did this. So the reason I put this together, and that's mentorship, where you bring other people along. So, Travis, when you said you've kind of got that younger person, it's always stopping long enough to say, you're so valuable in terms of helping you, but I want to shorten your learning cycle. You've learned over 30 years, like Gordon and I, shorten that cycle into a few years is by sharing the knowledge, but being patient and say, it's okay that we had a little mistake here. We're going to do this again, but I'm going to stand here with you and we're going to walk through it. So everybody in the marketplace, as you learn, share that knowledge and then bring other people in. The question about how we get, the trade issue is a serious, serious problem. And if you ask any builder in the marketplace, he's going to say, my number one problem is I can't find the people to do what I need done, much less do it right. I just can't find a warm body that's willing to take on the task. And I think that we all realize that this is going to give us some trouble. So educating this group and showing that it's a noble field, it's a noble craft, and really letting people know that building houses is one of the most remarkable gifts you can ever give generations to come, because you can say, I did that, I worked on that, I'm really proud of that. And that's, I think, what's going to bring more people to the industry, that we share that experience of why building is such a great thing, that we put people in shelter and in healthy, safe shelters too.
So that brings me to a question. So how long are the CI Live trainings? And I can speak for my son-in-law, my daughter's husband. He is a builder of houses. He has chosen to enter the trade, and I fully support it. And I feel like he's, at the end of the day, sometimes a little more satisfied with what he does. And I speak with builders, and they are interested in these things, but sometimes there's not a whole lot of time in the day. And they've got to be able to plan their time. And what can a person expect when they enter into one of your trainings, as far as scope and time frame?
Justin, why don't you take that one?
So we have several different subjects. The first entry is applied building science, really from a real perspective of this kind of the topic that we're having tonight of, there's the concept, but let's go touch and feel it. That's 2 days here in Denver. And we've got, the next is really the next level. We kind of break that out because we've got cold climates and we've got hot, humid climates. So we've got the same, but a twist on, focusing towards the hot, humid or the cold climate in particular. Then we look at enclosure and, optimizing your enclosure, just foundations, walls, and roof systems, air tightness, improving insulation, diving a little bit deeper. That again is 2 days. Next step is really mechanical systems. Bring your mechanical contractor. We're going to talk ventilation. We're going to talk deeper into psychrometrics, latent sensible loads, flows, mixings, velocity, equipment choices and selections, based on the fact that you now have a better understanding that you've got a better enclosure. So we've got to really dial this in. And so that last step is, we've done several of these now, is now we kind of have a relationship with you. We've probably seen you 6 days or something, maybe 7. Some people come for the first course twice. So we know you. Like, we see Greg O'Byrne on here from Australia. He came up. A bunch of people on here, actually. So then you get to this place where you bring a plan, or we talk about a generic plan, and really come up with your idea of how would you get, and what does this sort of optimization to net zero energy look like for you, knowing you're going to be there probably by the year 2025, maybe even 2020, 2030, somewhere in there. But what does that look like for you and the rest of the class? And it really gives you an idea of, optimizing. It's not always thrown at it, but it's optimizing. Passive house is a lot of that as well, is optimizing things to yield the best result for the least amount of money.
So that's pretty typical layout. The CI Live is kind of a 2-day format. If you're coming to Denver, you might as well stay the 2 days. We always, of course, as you can imagine, Greg, well, that's a lot of time. We're pretty busy. Of course, you've been busy for 35 years. when is the right time to do this? And if we said to, let's say you got a 90-day build cycle, if you came 2 days, what are the chances that when you came, you go, oh, wow, I just learned something that'll take a day or two out of my next build? That's exactly what that woman from Texas that Mark spoke of, that's basically what she was saying. My husband didn't have time to come. He sent me, and I'm part of the business, but I'm not the right person. But I immediately realized we're doing things that are taking us extra time. And once we came to this session and we learned from manufacturers and found other partners who could help us with this, it's like, oh, I've already saved a bunch of time on my job sites. So we have to, my point would be every builder needs to look at their bottom line or look at their expense sheet and go, what's my training budget? And whether it's us or somebody else, what's your training budget? Because every other manufacturing company, industry has a training budget. You go ask, my son worked for Frito-Lay, the potato chip guys. Every employee's got a training budget. These are folks who work on an automated line. The average tenure of somebody working on the potato chip line is something like 18 years. They're working, excuse me, automated equipment. I'm like, what do you mean training budget isn't always the same? He said to me, Dad, if we don't retrain every 3 months for about 45 minutes, our chip quality goes way down. People forget how to turn the dials. They forget the temperature of the oil. They forget to adjust seasonally. We invest it's only 45 minutes every 3 months. And imagine what you could do if you took 45 minutes, even every 3 months. Of course, the building industry is way more complicated. But imagine that. So every builder, and I would encourage everybody on this call, as you're talking to builders, suppliers, contractors, just ask them, what's your training budget? How many days a year? Are your guys off-site in a classroom? That's where you find the time to do this stuff. And you'll find immediate return.
To put that, because we're a small company, we feel that it's always difficult to take time. But I'll say we do a lot of private trainings where they're tailored a little bit more towards, so we can air a little bit more dirty laundry. But say it's a national builder and they come in for a 2-day training, we can specify things a little bit more towards their product mix and so forth. But to Gord's point is, how would a national builder under intense financial pressures to deliver, send all their area VPs, all their production managers, all at different times for 2-day training, their architect and engineering staff, all take in a period of 6 months, literally 100 people had 2 days off from one company. And that's big.
Yeah.
It is, but I know where you get the money for that. You take it out of the warranty budget, because as soon as you start doing things the right way, you have to you get to stop redoing them. It was a fantastic revelation from one of the guys in the training when I was out there. I don't remember. He was for a large builder, I believe in the South, and he was talking about I want to say it was a stucco ephes issue, and he was very upset because he had just seen something revealed on Mark's presentation. He was like, if I had known that, I'd be 6 figures richer. And so if you're concerned about losing a couple days for training, and Steve Basic always says this. Every time I talk to Steve about this, he always goes, the guy that doesn't think he has time to get away from the job because he has too much to do, that's the guy who needs to be at the damn training. Because if he was running the job a little better, he'd have those hours. He could get in the mix. And this is how you run the job better. You know the right way to do it. You learn from people who have already done the research, because no one has time to make all the mistakes themselves. Isn't that a Straub or is that a Stebrick? Whatever. You quote the important people and then you win.
That's Sam Levinson. That's an old Sam Levinson line.
Oh, Levinson. Damn it.
Yeah.
You have to learn from the mistake. You have to learn from the mistakes of others. Yeah, because you can't live long enough to make them all yourself. Yeah, that's the one.
But the truth of that, we just had a custom project, and there's been a few we've gone out to here in the local Denver market. We'd have to fly, but there's also things which thank goodness for this technology we have now. We're monitoring 4 projects in different cities for comfort issues. But yeah, so here's a huge house. They call, something's not right. It's custom house. What time and money did it take for this? And we go out to the job site, and it's a super enclosure as well. Exterior insulation, 2-inch of stone wool insulation, rain screen system, this burnt Japanese type of cladding material on the whole building. Windows from Italy. What do we have to do? Oh, to make this right? Well, you got to take all the windows out, and we got to take all the cladding you put on and the insulation and and the water and air barrier off the building. It took 6 months to put this building back into its configuration it was supposed to be in. So time is this funny thing.
Yep. And I was going to mention too, Trav, you brought up a really good point. I was with a builder yesterday, and he had said, well, we're really focusing on sustainability, and we know that it costs more, so we have to charge our clients more for that. And I said, well, let's just wait a minute. Let's define sustainability first, and you tell me what that really is. Is sustainability a healthy, safe, efficient, and durable house? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, we got that, because you have to do that anyway. What was interesting is they were talking about margin. How do we improve the margins on our projects? And I said, well, let's take a look at what the gaps in where the margin comes up and hurts you. And you brought up one, Trav. So you look at warranty and you're like, what does that cost you? And you're like, I don't know, but it's large. As you know, most of national builders have to have a retainage, right? So their lawyers go and look at their warranty programs, and then they force them to retain whatever it is that the potential warranty could exist. So you hold that in escrow as long as you need to until the time frame of the warranty in that particular state is up. So some of those have in $3, $4, $8, $10,000 that they hold in their liability column on their sheets and their financials that say, at the end of this, we'll just hope you haven't spent it all. And some of them said, yeah, wow, I didn't spend it all. I crushed it. And I'm like, what if you reduced that amount in half? And we had worked with a builder. Their original retainage was $3,800. They made a bunch of changes to the way they installed windows and details, and they reduced it from $3,800 to $800 a house. Now imagine that in terms of your margin each closing. But what this really goes back to is, Travis, as you know, you don't build houses, your trades do. And this is what's difficult, is that we have all these trades that they're all focused on their kind of their facet of the job. And so if you looked at where is the biggest gap in profit and margin, you'd say, I'm losing it in time and in inefficiencies of process. So if you looked at that and said, if I could really improve on the drawings and the details so that everybody knew who's on first, who's next, and how would I improve that? I mean, how many times do your drawings show where the electrical, the plumbing, and the HVAC goes? Instead, we have the heating guy walks in, he goes, yeah, I could probably put the ducts over there. And have you ever seen a trade tear another trade's work out? And you're like, yeah. You're like, well, who didn't know we needed to put plumbing in here? So I think a lot of this could be cleared up by watching what is it that you want to accomplish? How do I want it? And then who? And then the who is, are they trained to do it the way I want to? If not, how do I teach them? And should I build a mock-up to demonstrate? And those are all the ways that a complex industry like this has to go through to make those changes. And that's why Justin brought that up about if you go in the back at CI and you go, here's a table of flashings, go try them. That's the way we learn. But in the end, I've got to come up with a method and then detail that and then hold everybody accountable to that methodology.
I have so many things I want to say. That was excellent. And one of the things and it popped up in the chat box is there was another architect on, and they want to know how or what training would they take through CI? And my first response was take the building science construction training. I think all architects should be taking the construction training, right? We're going to get better. Those details are going to get easier. I think what I said to Travis when I was trying to find it was, wouldn't it be great if we could put QR codes on our drawings that linked to an 8-minute video that showed someone installing this window or whatever, right? That's getting better. Like that's getting another thing. I kind of low key want you guys to like get in a van and haul a thing around and just do a 2-day training at like every building conference across the US and Canada, because like if I'm going to the conference already and it's regional to where I'm at, what's 2 days to do the training there? I think that the downside to you probably have an amazing facility in Colorado is, it's not only the time, right? Then it's getting to Colorado for the people who aren't in your area. And so I always thought it would be awesome.
We have weed here, but we have weed here, Emily.
Well, that's true. Well, it's legal in Maine too. So,
yeah, okay. Darn it.
but yeah, so I would love to, see that would be awesome, right? Because that's how do you get into the training? And I did appreciate that you said, bring your mechanical contractor, bring your architects and engineers, because people need to hear that, right? This might be construction instruction, right? That's what you've created, but the architects and the designers and the mechanical people need to take that too, because you're right. I mean, I like to do coordination drawings for exactly that reason, right? I don't like soffits and chases and weird things in my design because all of a sudden there wasn't anywhere to put things, the plumbing or, somebody took out some structural piece because they had to run their ductwork through it. So
we thought about this. So there is a concept. Now, if anybody wants to be a generous, donor of, funds to do this. So we thought about this because I haul a trailer around, and the difference between the size and the magnitude of all the things that we have, so it's paring it down in this building, is the 500 square foot house that wouldn't fit in a truck with 2 fully functional duct systems, zone systems, and every trick thing that you can think of, the amount of tools and everything. But we did think of, what if we had like a race car trailer that we could put stuff out of, that had loading dock ramps and a big awning on the side that we could pull into a parking lot with. But then when we started doing the budgeting on it, you're like, this isn't impossible, but it's a Peterbilt with a trailer. It's $1 million problem, which would be fun. And then there's a guy or gal to drive the thing, and then insurance. So it completely started to unravel itself to this, holy wow, that's
But the problem was more than that. It was called, look at the 3 old guys that were going to ride around in that truck, and we all went like, do you guys want to go on the road for 6 months? We're like, no, I don't want to do that. So that was the hardest part of all.
You gotta get somebody to drive it, and then you got to hit up all your building science people that all over the country. You send it to Kansas City, Travis does your training. You send it to the Coast.
I have my commercial driver's license. I can drive a Class A vehicle.
Oh, you're right.
You got to volunteer.
Yeah.
It's getting a little easier.
Right here.
It's getting easier. I love it.
I need to reinforce, it's part of the learning experience. Because when you, in the same way, the definition in Canada, the definition of an expert in Canada is some jerk from Toronto showing slides. The rest of Canada hates Toronto. So there's always a value to flying somebody in from afar, but there's also a value to going out, because it puts a gravitas on it, if I can use a fancy word. It reinforces that what I'm doing here is important. When I bring my architect and I bring my mechanical contractor. Mark, you and I have seen this with the big country guy. I probably shouldn't mention names. But the first session, he came alone with his sons. The next session, he brought his architect. And he said, this is the first time we've been able to kind of sit together and work on this problem together. Because when we do it locally, well, I don't have time for lunch. Yeah, I got to head home. And you don't get that time together. You don't get that, we'll call it bonding if you want. There's a real team value to being away. So yes, I get it. You got to fly to Denver. That's why we put it in Denver, frankly, because it's central, very easy to get to. But it's part of the learning science, if you will, that it reinforces that this somehow is different and it's better, and I can open up, I can be more open to ideas because I'm not limited by what is local. I'm now seeing what's possible across the whole country. So I feel like we have to still remember the building science, but also the learning science.
I think that's a good time to start checking on the chat box. Mike's been doing a great job of highlighting some questions that have come through here. And there was an earlier on question specifically to the panelists. 2 questions, so you guys can round up and attack these. Gentlemen, in your opinion, what is the future of trades education? Like, what are you guys kind of piecing together? What's coming? And then the second question is what you guys think we could do to solve this labor shortage that you already mentioned. Is there plotting and scheming going on over there at CI just in the back warehouse, or do you have big plans for global domination? Help us out.
No, we're very interested in not having global domination. I think that it's a great question, Travis, and it's multifaceted. I'll just look at a couple of them. One is some examples around the country that are existing. For example, in Michigan, there's been high schools that are bringing students to a gymnasium, and they'll have the trades from the local market come in and set up. A plumber sets up a little area in plumbing, and then tile set a contractor and a framer, and they would set them around in the gymnasium, and the kids would all come in and they would go to some of these locations and try that. How many kids have never tried anything to do with our trade. And they would go around and some of them were like, I would never do that. Some people were like, that is me. That's what I want to do. And so probably a third of the kids that came said, I'm a hands-on person. Some kids are like, I learn on computers. I never want to do anything like that. And so you have to find the segment of people that find that to be important. So that's the young people. We also look at the issues of wage and the other challenges that are in place. They said yesterday, I read an article that said we're having more people quit their jobs than ever before in history. And part of that is that there's so many opportunities to work. And somebody goes, geez, I can make 18 bucks an hour going to Starbucks. Why am I doing this? So we have this interesting part of the passion for why we do what we do. Many of us that have been in this industry can't get out of it. You try to leave and you come back at it because it has this rewarding aspect of why we do it. So the challenge we're going to have in the future is that finding people and young people that want to come and work in the field, work on a cold day, work on the rainy days, work on the hot, sunny and humid days. Those are the things that we have to worry about and think about, because we see a transition towards panelized buildings and that kind of stuff, because we know that we're having a difficult time getting trades and fields to do some of that. So as a problem, I don't think we're going to solve it by seeing 100,000, 200,000 new people come into the industry, begin training, and then we're going to be fine. We're going to have to see that this limited people we have, how do you more efficiently put a product together and continually draw on the marketplace to bring in new talent, train them, but keep them excited about why. And here's where you could go. Here's the opportunities for your future. Those are things we have to do a better job of, stopping long enough and sharing it with people about why this is such a beautiful industry to be a part of.
And a quick answer to part two of your question to support what Mark's saying. One of the quickest ways to improve the labor shortage is to improve the productivity of people who are already working. And just Google Frank Galbraith, the father of industrial engineering, of which that's what my degree is in. Frank tripled the labor productivity of the bricklaying industry in the early 1900s. Why? Because they were having a labor shortage crunch. They couldn't get enough bricklayers. And he, just by putting training and education and processes in place, tripled the labor productivity of the bricklaying industry. So we can increase productivity, get 30% more value simply by putting training in place so people know why they're doing what they're doing. It's a pretty powerful opportunity.
But Gord, I just want to just say really briefly why he fixed that. I think what he did to improve labor productivity is he watched and what's what kind of Gord's background is, but he watched the bricklayers and found out where are your biggest gaps in performance. Was it where the materials are or how you got them to the location? That's just kind of industrial engineering. But tell him what he did to speed up productivity quickly, because I thought what he did is people were like, that's a great idea. And we look at that as saying, well, doesn't everybody use that? But in the 1900s, they didn't. So I thought it was pretty cool.
You've all seen the two-tier scaffold of a bricklayer where the bricks are on one level, your feet are on another. That was Frank Galbraith, because bricklayers were getting older and they had to quit early in career because their backs were broken. So guys were retiring at age 45, 50 because they had no back anymore. And all he did was make the workplace just a two-tiered scaffold. As an example, he palletized. You remember the little pallets where the mortar is? He palletized that mortar to make sure that the guys didn't have to reach up, reach down, and then he palletized the bricks in a certain way that you only had to pick up the brick one. You didn't have to reposition the brick. But simple concepts that really just took a little bit of training and education. Here's the issue. The bricklayers union at the time picketed, death threats and so on. You're going to take jobs away from us. And after they did it for a little while, they went, oh, wow, this is way better. My back isn't sore at the end of the night. So we're going to see some resistance to that training, your trades are, but once they see that, oh, you're just trying to make our job easier and simpler, we can do that. That's just one example, but there's lots of examples of that in the industry, and that's why I'm a big enthusiast of invest in training.
100%. Those opportunities are there throughout our industry. And it takes the different perspectives of people looking at it from the architect's side, the builder's side, the designer side, the engineer's side, coming together. And then more importantly, and I think you guys kind of scratch this itch too, the person who's new to it, the new guy hasn't learned the bad habits yet. He can look at it and go, well, that seems stupid. Why do you do it that way? And a lot of times there's Justin to say, this is why, because if you do it the way you're talking about, it's not going to work. Look, let's try it. But if it's a new idea that's new and never considered before because we've always done it this way, that has tremendous value. And I really think that that's kind of going to harken back to that passion that Mark was talking about, getting these younger people involved at a younger age, even exposing them to the work they can do with their hands versus the drawings and sort of the design side of it too, giving those opportunities exposure. I think that's how we solve the trade gap, is just starting them younger, letting them know that this is a viable place to go in life and the wonders that it holds, because it really is a noble profession at every level. Just my 2 cents.
You're going to see some innovation too. Sorry. Go ahead, Justin. Yeah.
I was going to say one of our partners brought to our attention, and we're bringing other manufacturers in on this. The Building Talent Foundation, and Lindsay, our partnerships coordinator, has been connecting with them and working with them, and we are looking at them. They're bringing people that didn't have that chance. They're new, they're young, back into this industry and helping get training for them, helping them then be placed with the builder, watching and checking in. How are they doing? And this is just boots on the ground folks. And we're working with them to say, just bring the people here. We'll find we have 2 extra seats, whatever, whoever wants to come, let's figure out how to get those folks here and teach them the right way. They're young, they're malleable, they want to know this stuff, they want to make a good living. And we can bring some really new young faces in this industry. And I think it's wonderful.
So you guys have done a lot of trainings, right? So you have lots of different kinds of trainings or whatever. What do you think the biggest failure is, or what do you see every time, right? Like, where do the new guys need to start in the training? Like, what's the biggest failure in the industry that you're seeing that we're just like, we're not learning at all?
Well, my opinion is, because we're North Americans, we need to know the why. You need to have a sense of and simply, while it's too theoretical, no, you need to have a sense of what is the what's the objective, what are you really trying to achieve, and so I think you have to be open to that. You have to and it doesn't take long, but you have to be open to that. Second, I really feel like people just don't. They think if they've heard it once, that's it. And if I have to hear it a second time, I must be really stupid. No, you absolutely have to understand when you're going to start on training, this is not one and done. You have to book and say, I need at least 3 or 4. I knew a builder, I was a builder out in the Virginia area, who said, I need to do, a manufacturer said, hey, we'll help you do a pilot house. And he said, I'm not interested in a pilot house. What I'm interested in is 3 houses, because I know the first house, it'll go fine because you'll be around. The second house will be a mess because you won't be around. I know that this is going to take 3 opportunities. So I don't need you to give me product for 3 houses. I need you to be around for 3 houses so that we get used to it. It's layered learning. So the biggest challenge is to get people to understand you're not dumb for taking more training. You're smart for taking more training. It shows a sign of maturity that, of course, I need to hear this more than once. And I'm missing out on a huge portion of the learning if I don't commit to taking it more than once. And from different people, it doesn't have to be us. From different people is fine.
I also thought it was interesting. Travis said, like the new guy, he shows up, he doesn't know anything. You can kind of point it out and say, well, what's that? So like, what has happened to, why isn't, a traditional apprenticeship as popular anymore? And since it's not as popular and everyone's too busy, is when you hire someone new on, do you just immediately send them to construction instruction for 6 days before they've thought about anything else, done anything on the job site, learn a little bit, then show up, and then they can see and look at stuff that you're doing? I mean, I don't know, like what happened to traditional apprenticeship? Like, why is that not a thing anymore? Why are we too busy to train?
Well, we did lose a lot of trade schools. So many of the trade schools disappeared. So there was never really a good introduction. I remember when I was younger, we always had the junior colleges. The junior colleges would have a program on construction and carpentry, and most of those went away. So the only introduction to the construction industry was to stumble onto a job site, know a friend who says a guy's looking for a carpenter to work over the summer. You want to go help him sling siding or shingles or throw something on the building. There's really no easy entry point. So you almost have to be guided to it. I know that we work really hard at trying to figure out ways to hire people, but they don't really know to look. Who's going to say, I'm looking to do this in that building career because I don't know what they are. How many different trades and careers are there in the housing industry? And it's enormous, all the opportunities, but nobody knows really how to go find that. And I think we don't know how to use that as terminology. I saw Mike Gerton had asked a great question about, the parents of kids today. They don't really encourage their kids to go be in this industry. They're like going, yeah, that's what you do when you can't get a real job. And so I think that they don't realize that what a great place to encourage their kids to say, this is a really good craft, learning to be an electrician, a plumber, a carpenter. Those are really great skills, but there's so many more avenues in this industry. There's salespeople, there's other places within that industry to really learn about this craft. We just don't see enough people talking about. We're such a fragmented industry that we rarely have enough people that's collective. I was using this as an example of building codes, building permits for a while. So many states have these long lead times for permits, and we forget why that the housing industry, the builders industry, is so strong when we collectively work together to change something. And if we said, you know what, the plans are done, the permits finished, the engineering is done, the permit should be quick, not this long, laborious process. And as a group, we're not very well coordinated to find a focused way to change things. If we as an industry really drove together, I think NHB has been working on some of this, but to really find a way to bring people into our industry, all of us standing up, I think, Travis, what you guys are doing, the Unbuilded podcast, all those kind of things are showing people that this is a remarkable place to be. Let your kids listen to it. I think it was trying to think of who's got their kids doing things on job sites, and they're showing that on Instagram. People are like, that's cool. I should get my kids to do that. And that's what brings kids in to introduce them to what it is that makes working with your hands such a beautiful thing to do. It's not just, did you type enough and then write enough code? Did you really do something that represents a legacy that you left and that you get to do every day and so proud of? And I think that's part of that need.
Mark, everything you just said is so powerful. I'm so glad you said it out loud. And I believe you've answered one of the chat questions without even being asked. It was where is the industry stuck in the dark ages? And do you feel like that's an adequate answer to that question?
Yeah, I kind of do. I think that when you look at the housing industry, is what the way in which you look at it can be considered $1 trillion industry. It's one of the most vital industries to our country's economy. When the housing industry goes down, the economy's in serious trouble because so many people are beholden and benefit from this industry. Imagine a house. Let's say it's a $700,000 house. How many people in that community, plumbers, electricians, drywall contractors, benefit from the price of that house being shared with so many people? It's probably one of the greatest industries that does that. You buy a car at a dealership, the dealership makes money, and then the rest of the money goes back to the corporation. Building houses keeps money local. So as the housing industry goes, so goes our economy. And people realized what a beautiful baseline that is to be a part of that. If you look at some of the most successful people, you'll see them like guys like Travis, who's got boats and cars and all that stuff. He could be tremendously successful and doing that. But there's people that have done incredibly well. I've met plumbers that were stunningly financially successful, have companies that are large stucco contractors with 1,000 employees. This is a beautiful business and a beautiful industry, but we just don't demonstrate that. When I mentioned somebody there's a stucco contractor with 1,000 employees, he's like, seriously? They've got that many? You're like, oh, in Phoenix, they'll build, one builder will build, one of the largest builders in the nation is going to build 3,000 homes a year in Phoenix. Can you imagine closing 15 houses a day? What is the infrastructure to pull that off with that's one national builder? What does the infrastructure take to pull that off? Lumber yards, all the dealers, all the trades. So it is such a vital thing. And I think it's unfortunately acts like, it looks like the dark ages, but it really is a remarkable industry.
Yeah, let's not be too negative. I wouldn't say dark ages. There's no doubt that the stats will show we haven't increased labor productivity in houses in years. That's true. But by the same time, we've made amazing progress on building science, right? There's a lot of stuff going on. You look at the average energy efficiency of houses today versus 30 years ago. The car industry can't claim those kinds of improvements. We've done a nice job on average. I mean, there's some places better than others. But so there are some things we've done really well. We just haven't tackled the labor productivity thing very well.
Well, it's difficult. I mean, there isn't an industry that doesn't really have that. I mean, yes, the construction industry, it's labor productivity. You talk one community, there's, 2 plumbers that have the whole game, and there's a wait, there's cabinet shortages, we have material crunches. We're building a floor system here. There's a 1-month backlog on I-joist flooring. My brother has a trucking company. He can't hire anybody that wants to drive a truck. It's a lot like construction. We commiserate on this a whole lot. They don't need a college degree to drive a truck, and it's a really good job, and some people might like it, but he's got 7 trucks with no drivers sitting right now. So I hear it all over.
Yeah. And
I
I think,
sorry.
yeah, that's the same way as, because we say everybody's got to go get a college education, right? We need to talk more about that, about, going into the trades, why it's a craft, why, I do like science, do you like math, do you like all these things, that people would get into, because, maybe they can't take the job as a truck driver because they came out of debt, counting them out of college with $50,000 worth of debt, right? Like everybody's now got to make $200,000 a year to make up for the debt they made in college, which was, is a terrible thing. But one of the questions that came up in the chat box that kind of goes along with this thread is, do you guys do any just basic training? Like, where's the best place to start? I teach a sustainable design class, and they have to take basic architecture first. They have to know how a wall system goes, like what's in a wall, right? Mm-hmm. Before they can start to think about then, how else is that? Like, do you have basic training? And then also someone pointed out about, it's undervalued, the small business or whatever. Do you do business training too? Because I think that's the other secondary failure to, people in the industry is we're not taught business, right? We're taught a skill and a trade. And so I think that's the other thing that's missing is that can be hard, is we need business skills.
Well, I'll tackle the first one. We do a fundamentals course, which is really geared towards that person brand new to the construction industry, doesn't know what a CO is, doesn't know what a 50% CD set even is or looks like, or a header, real basic stuff on a construction schedule, basic. So we do that. We do it usually once or twice a year in normal times, I should say.
Yep. And I would think, and Travis, you guys have seen some of this for the business side. I'm watching Matt Reisinger and his Build Show thing. I know he's been doing some of that operating business stuff and getting people to share that, and saying, I know that in the Missouri market, you've got Jake, and Jake's saying, hey, here's what I've learned, how do I shorten that cycle? There's a builder that I work with down in Arizona, Brad Levitt with AFT Construction, another great guy who's always about sharing, what I learned this. And the Builder 20 groups, I think, are something that NHB has set up for the last 20 plus years. Many builders are in the Builder 20 groups where they get together with 20 builders in their particular level, but in all different parts of the country. And some of them have told me, they go, if I wasn't in that group, I wouldn't be in business, because I would come to the table and the rule is you have to disclose everything. You go like, I was thinking about buying this piece of land. Here's what I'm thinking. The guy goes, no, you don't want to do that. Here's why. So sharing all those aspects of the building business is really important, because it's very easy to get over your head about managing the money, borrowing from Peter to pay Paul kind of concept, where you think as long as you've got houses under construction and you're moving along, you must be making money. And building industry is remarkable in terms of what it takes to be profitable and to be successful. I think, the builders in this call, Travis, for sure, you would say, man, if you're not watching that as careful as everything else, if you look at the architects, no offense, family, but you guys get to kind of have a fixed fee, right? You go like, sometimes it's the percentage of the project. And in the construction industry, it could be a $700,000 house. If you can pull 2 and 3% net at the end, you're like really happy to pull that out of it. So yeah, I did it. So I think that that's a very important aspect, that building houses is very complex and requires a lot of attention to detail to really understand the business. And I know that we don't do much of that but I think it's a really important area. And maybe Justin will look at bringing somebody in to
I was going to say
look at that opportunity. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a great,
that's a great idea.
great
one
question.
Of the concepts of the facility is, as we get it up and got it up and outfitted, it was, let's bring in guest lecturers, by all means. So I'll put a challenge out there. If somebody has a course idea and wanted to have geez, I don't know where to hold this, I don't have the facility, by all means, this is something we'd love to chat about, and work with others. We feel like after all these years, we've met a lot of folks who bring a lot of value to the industry. We want to be inclusive of that. So by all means, if somebody has that opportunity in their pocket, but let's talk about it.
Let's get Emily down to Denver ASAP, because she could definitely cover it from the architect design side. And she does a great job with that on her pod. But I would agree that the stuff that Jake Bruton's been doing has been really, really helpful to me personally. And there's a lot more of it out there. So I don't know if this is a real thing, but it kind of feels like we're in the golden age of community in our industry, where because there's such a boom time and interest rates have been low and everyone's building and everyone's on social media sharing what they know. And you guys are out there and, hey, here's our free app that will show you how to do this. And you can overcome the language barrier. Just show them this. You don't even have to tell them anything. Say, do it like this. That level of sharing and communication and leadership is something that, I mean, I feel really grateful to be alive and doing this right now, because I think there was a time where there were guys kind of just holding those secrets close and not sharing them because that was their livelihood and they worked hard to earn them. So I'm not saying they owed it to anyone else, but my God, what a great thing that we've done to share. Hey, Steve Basics telling me this detail. Yeah. Well, crap, I just did that wrong on the last 3. I'm never going to make that mistake again. Thanks, Steve. Never met you. Appreciate it.
I was just going to use that as an example that, Big Red, so Steve's got this thing and he shows people on the thing with his big red marker and he goes, here's why I did this. And here's why that's important. And here's a detail. And he is sharing all of his secrets and his ideas. And he had a little question in the box that said about teaching architects. I remember going to summer camp in Boston at Stebrick's summer camp and saying, they all got together in this room and said, why can't we get building science into the architecture schools? And there was a lot of people. Pat Hellman from the University of Minnesota said, we've tried. He said, this problem with architecture schools are that most of them have a fixed curriculum and they don't have any room in that curriculum to add building science to that section. So it has to be an elective, which is amazing. So I'm going to go to architecture school, graduate with a degree in architecture and not have to learn any building science. Hard to believe, but that's really not part of the curriculum mix. So AIA and some of the schools are trying to say, so maybe we need to have one class on building science, or do we bring a lot of that into the approach of how we look at architecture? Because many of you realize that if the design's wrong or the design's complex, we depend on the builder. I depend on Travis. You've got to fix all the details. Here's the drawing. You figure out how to actually make it work, because I have no idea. It would be so much better. Guys, like when you look at Steve Basic and his builders, he's there going, hey, let's do this. Let's work together. What would you do differently? I think that's an example of what architecture needs to get back to, is how do we learn and translate that information from a drawing on a flat 2-dimensional up to 3-dimensional, and it has to be functional, work, and be cost effective. And those are things that you're right, Travis. This community is now sharing that better than I've ever seen.
I absolutely love that comment. Not 1 hour of my AXP hours are required to be in building science. Not one. And I have over, thousands of hours that I need to earn in my career before I can actually become a licensed architect, before I can sit for my exams. And I'm not going to be tested in any building science. So your comment about the AIA and Emily's comment earlier about student debt, I would feel an awful lot better about paying my student debt if I actually had some building science built into that debt. I mean, it's kind of an odd concept, but I would feel better about that. And that's just a comment.
It's a good comment.
Yeah, it's a great thing. We've talked, I don't know if we talked much on BS and Beer, but I talk about it a lot on my podcast about what is in architecture education. What are they actually trying to teach you in architecture school? And then, like you said, we have to do 3 years worth of hours of continuing education afterwards before we can sit for our license. So even if we can't fit it into the architectural education curriculum at architecture school, it should be in the, so you've been taught in architecture school how to think outside of the box, so that I always like to say, don't all live in Walmart, right? We don't all live in a big square box, which is, right. Architecture make things interesting and dynamic, right? So you've learned to think outside of the box without knowing how to construct anything. Now you've got 3 years to learn how to take your ideas and make them constructible. And that's what should happen in that. And yeah, if you talk to a lot of architects, I mean, how many bathroom details have you drawn, right? You work in a bigger firm, and that's what you get to do for 3 years, right? And so I do think, yeah, it would be interesting. I mean, our materials class in architecture school was one of my favorite. We were given 2x4s with holes and bolts in them, and we had to build things out of it. It was the most interesting thing that we did. Through the course. So there certainly could be more things, I think, in architecture school, but that 3-year internship I think is the same as in the trades. Is for architects, what happens during that 3 years? It should be critical if we can't get it into school curriculum.
There's no doubt that, we're attempting, it's gotten easier. The AIA will now accept more, I would say, additional learning credits. So that's something we're pursuing as well, so that you can see it. Okay, this is allowed, or at least I get some credits towards my my continuing education. So I think it is going to get easier. It's one of the things that's come out of the last 2 years, that we've realized there are different ways to do training, different venues, different opportunities. So I think we have there's more access to more types of training in different formats. And I think my sense is AIA is opening up to that.
I think it's worth noting too that this is not just a two-sided coin. It's not the designers in the office and it's the builders in the field. It really is, and you guys have already touched on this, it is all your mechanical tradespeople, your plumbers, your electricians, your insulation contractors, all the parts and people. But I don't know, I feel like there's an opportunity missed, again, to go back to bringing people in, there's an opportunity missed to express the joys of building as a part of this machine from the engineering side or from the painting side, or, I don't know, I guess my mechanical engineer is super important to me now that I'm starting to spend a ton of time on air tightness. Like it used to be, I'll call the guy, they're going to put a 4-ton system in. The house is this big, rule of thumb, stand at the street. If the thumb blocks the house, 4 tons, right? If you only get up to the white part of the nail, 3, that's it. Go get the equipment, let's put it in. But we're a long way from that now. And now that we're doing these other things that are so important to provide a comfort and durability and all the things that we preach on this show about, this is what we're doing and this is why it's so important. If we start talking to kids in elementary school about science and physics and art, and then just kind of loop in, oh, look, you can see that in the house here. Like, I see that you did this really cool design here, and we see that echoed in the columns on the Parthenon. I mean, whatever it is, like if we draw that connection to these people at a younger age, and we can, get them excited about understanding why there's condensation on their glass in the summer when they're drinking their lemonade, and then talk to them about the windows in the house in the winter, all of a sudden, for their entire upbringing, they're looking at it that way, and we're valuing all of these different partners to put this whole thing together and make it work. And those people are going to end up at this training, and they're going to be the ones that are writing the next AIA course. And that's how it's all going to get solved. We just have to start a little earlier and share what we know. And God, we're on a great path to do that. We just have to keep talking about it, and it's making a difference.
It is. Well, I was just going to say, the last thing I was going to mention just quick is that, Justin, could you maybe do a walkthrough? You talked about doing that, maybe turn off the green screen and do that, or is that possible?
I would like to, but I actually have to say I was waiting for my opportunity. I have a 6-year-old sitting there waiting for me to pick him up, and I'm going to probably get a call very soon. So I got to jump off the call, but maybe we can get on another time. We can do a tour. So
that'd be great. I forgot to do that. Sorry, buddy. That was good.
That's okay.
Have a good trip and go say hi to Luca.
Yeah, we got soccer tonight, so I got to play soccer, dad, coach, referee, and all that. So it's gonna be fun.
Sounds fun. Enjoy that. Thank you.
Thanks for
Take care,
joining
everybody.
us.
Thanks for your time, Justin,
right.
and thanks for the
care,
important work you're
everybody.
doing as a dad and as everything that you do. Thank you.
Looking forward to seeing you all, and thank you for everything that you all do. It's just good to be in an industry where we are all so passionate about what it is that we do. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks, Justin. I wanted to make one other comment on the let's call it the training side. I feel like we really need to leverage the manufacturers in our industry. We like to think we're a manufacturing industry. We're not necessarily really good at manufacturing, but many of your industry partners are. And you look at other industries, the car industry, I used to work in the car industry 40 years ago and used to get 7 different prices from 7 different headlight companies. They don't do that anymore. They partner up with one headlight company, maybe 2, and they share their notes and they find the most cost-effective way to build a car these days. And I think to some extent, partnerships, manufacturers have a lot of training opportunities. Manufacturers have a lot of expertise in production, manufacturing. I do think one of the ways we could improve the industry in terms of productivity is to leverage partnerships with manufacturers more. And I would just encourage, as part of, you were saying, Travis, outreach and just making sure that your manufacturers know that if they have something to offer, something they help, you'd be interested in taking advantage of that. I just think they've clearly shown the way that they do good training, offer good onboarding. It's pretty fascinating to say to a manufacturer, when you bring a new employee on, what does that look like? What's the onboarding process? Again, they got a budget, they have a time, they know how it's going to get spent, and they make all employees go through that. That's something I think we can learn from.
Well, I'm going to need to go too, you guys. Travis, it was such a pleasure to join you, and Greg, and Gord, you're amazing because he's in Toronto. But I wanted to thank all of you and everybody who's been so kind to join and let us share collectively our passion for what we do. It is such a great thing to be a part of, and I feel honored to be a part of BS and Beer and what you're trying to accomplish, your whole group and your team. And thank you all so much for thinking about us, and including me and my friends and everybody that got to join in and seeing folks. And it's just been a wonderful time frame. And thank you. And Emily, I will look forward to having you come on down. And it'll be just great to see all of you again when we get out of these little spots we've been in and start to get out some more. So it's been a great pleasure, and thank you all.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much.
What you
buddy.
guys are doing for our industry, training and education, is so important. The building science community and the fact that everyone is sharing, I think, is really lifting the community. So thank you for what you guys bring to the table. I mean, that's why we decided that on the BS and Beer show, we needed to have shows on education every so often, because we need to talk about teaching and training.
So true. Well, thank you so very much, all of you.
Take care, Mark.
guys.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
So Gord, you have the floor for the last 5 minutes. You're allowed to say whatever you want.
Well, I want to echo some of the themes. It is a great industry. Travis, you kind of indicated that we used to be maybe a little tight-fisted and not necessarily share. I don't know if I would necessarily agree with that. I would say over my 35 years, one of the best parts about the industry, when you find the right people, it took me a while to find the right ones, but the industry is amazingly good at sharing. So yes, there may be part of the industry that's maybe a little close to the chest, but I think one of the most fascinating parts about the industry is how willing builders are wanting to share their successes and their failures. It's a pretty cool industry for that reason, and that has to be celebrated. It is an opportunity. We even have in Canada, there's a program called LEAP, Local Energy Efficiency Program, and it was started by the Home Builders Association. And it's smaller builders, say in the Niagara Home Builders Association, who can't afford to bring in, huge consultants. They got together and said, could we bring in different manufacturers to try different things? And then each builder committed to trying one aspect. Not that one builder had to do everything, but each builder tried, hey, I'll try that insulated sheathing if you would try the heat recovery ventilator and you try the heat pump water heater, and then we'll compare notes. It was really interesting. And it's a funded program now through a government program, but a local energy efficiency program where people were sharing their knowledge of at the joys and the challenges of implementing new technology. Another way to learn, right, is to use use a collective learning process. We're more socialist than you guys are, so maybe that's easier to do. But that's just a thought. But I'll just say again, thanks for the opportunity. Wonderful, so many great folks online. A very powerful group. I hope to be back at some point. So thanks for including us.
You're welcome anytime, Gord. Thank you so much.
We really appreciate it. It's been great.
It's
Wonderful.
a fantastic experience to know that there are people like you out there bringing so many aspects of this industry into a training course. And now that I know that that exists, because I just learned about it when Mike asked me to be on the show, I'm going to be pursuing a good deal of that. So anybody who's doing what you're doing, and including you, I'm going to do everything I can to get as much information out there.
Thank you. And can I say one thing? The most training that I most love doing is sales training, because at heart, I'm a sales guy. My dad was a sales guy. My grandfather was a sales guy. If you guys need some help on how to sell energy efficiency, high performance, whatever it happens to be, I'd love to help with that.
I
I
think
want the
he
help.
just volunteered to do his own show
Help me.
on how to sell energy efficiency, because I'm not gonna lie, we've talked about this. So
Thoughts. I have some thoughts. So there you have it.
Beautiful.
yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank
That's
you,
been
guys.
great. Thank you to our audience, whoever's here still for joining us, and good night.
Thanks all.
Cheers.